There are rare moments when everything quietly rearranges itself behind the scenes, and those onlookers who once felt so certain about their roles suddenly find themselves wandering in a room whose walls have shifted overnight. That's what happens when silent resolve turns into an invisible force, reshaping destinies without ever announcing itself. In places where others fix their gaze on familiar patterns, an entirely new path quietly takes shape, one only noticed by those with the courage to walk it. Sometimes it takes a single, small refusal to shrink that sets an entire sequence in motion. Not because anyone was watching, but because the universe always listens for those subtle moments of self-respect. That's when everything around you subtly reorders. Doubts once whispered in dark corners lose their grip, and long shadows turn out to be nothing more than fading memories. The unexpected happens not as a storm, but as the calm certainty that something important has just shifted under the surface. There are always people who think they understand the rules of engagement, convinced they're pulling the strings from behind closed doors. But meanwhile, the real transformation is happening where their eyes never land. While others repeat the same tired strategies, the ones who choose growth move quietly, no longer seeking approval or permission, no longer allowing their vision to be edited by those who fear its brilliance. It's not about winning a contest no one announced. It's about quietly outgrowing every limit set by someone else's insecurity. The atmosphere itself changes when inner courage becomes non-negotiable. Those who once judged from a distance now find their old tactics obsolete, unable to decipher a language that was never meant for them. There's a shift in the air, as if every challenge has become an ally, each obstacle a signpost pointing the way forward. The most powerful outcome of all isn't found in any applause or visible reward, but in the unshakable peace that follows self-acceptance. No one else can keep pace with a spirit that's no longer interested in shrinking to fit. As events begin to unfold in ways no adversary could predict, it becomes clear. The old game is over and something far more meaningful has taken its place. The next chapter doesn't require permission. It simply arrives and everything begins again, on terms only you understand. There's a rare kind of strength that lives quietly in people who refuse to let small minds define them. It doesn't roar or demand attention. Instead, it waits, watching, learning, letting the world reveal its patterns before making a single decisive move. This kind of energy is magnetic. It draws both resistance and hidden allies, not by force, but by the natural pull of someone who dares to stand real in a world full of masks. Some spend their days trying to outmaneuver shadows, convinced that control comes from constant noise and agitation. But real mastery is built through patience and self-awareness, quietly rewriting the story others try to assign. In a room full of schemes and whispered doubts, it's not loudness that wins. It's the steady pulse of someone who knows their own worth, refusing to be rattled by chaos. Mistaken judgments from others are never the whole story. Sometimes what looks like retreat is only deep preparation, a gathering of insight that turns every slight, every rumor, into a stepping stone for bigger things. When others show their intentions through subtle actions, those moments become data, not defeat. Patterns emerge, lessons are stored, and what appeared as isolation is often just a cocoon before flight. True power doesn't mimic the tactics of the insecure. It responds with clarity and openness, knowing that pretense is a fragile shield. When authenticity becomes the answer, something remarkable unfolds. The rules of the game quietly shift, and those who came with malice discover their old tricks no longer work. Momentum builds not through conflict, but through the natural strength of standing clear and unwavering, even when surrounded by uncertainty. Eventually, observers step forward. Those who see past the surface and recognize the quiet revolution happening before their eyes. Authority finds its anchor in wisdom, not force, and the tides begin to change without warning. Allies appear not because of noise or bravado, but because realness resonates at a frequency that can't be ignored. The tables turn, and what was meant to isolate becomes the very reason new doors open, revealing how unseen support was always waiting in the wings. Some stories begin not with drama, but with a slow gathering of truths that eventually rearrange the entire landscape. Shadows cast by hidden intentions can't survive when careful eyes quietly trace every ripple in the environment, catching subtleties that others overlook. In the midst of daily routines and ordinary exchanges, patterns emerge, revealing the shape of actions long disguised as concern or camaraderie. The mask slips, not all at once but in fragments, each new piece adding weight to the evidence of deeper motives. Layers peel back to reveal not genuine grievances, but a restless urge born from watching another's rise, resentment cloaked as fairness, disguised beneath the surface of ordinary complaints. What seemed like a legitimate cause unravels into a tangle of disappointments, never spoken aloud, but fueling every attempt to drag others down. In the glow of real accomplishment, those holding grudges expose themselves, not with words, but through the energy they radiate when faced with someone else's genuine progress. Every movement in a conflict sets off a chain reaction, though rarely as predicted. The collapse of the most influential supporter is rarely loud. It's a quiet shift, a sudden withdrawal, averted eyes, the fading warmth of past loyalty. Evidence that once seemed ambiguous is suddenly undeniable, and stories once told with conviction dissolve under the pressure of new perspectives. As the truth surfaces, alliances fracture. The shift from active participation to silent observation speaks louder than any confession. The unraveling of once cohesive groups happens quietly, but decisively. When former confidants realize they've been manipulated, the energy of the whole scenario changes. Old defenders now hesitate, unsure, realizing their trust was misplaced. The need to distance themselves is urgent, not only for self-preservation but out of the dawning awareness that supporting a hollow cause was a violation of their own sense of right and wrong. When exposed, those who built their case on half-truths and drama rarely accept responsibility. Instead, they lash out at those who no longer serve their agenda, targeting with the same intensity once aimed outward. The fallout is swift and public, laying bare the core of the issue, the desperation to preserve a story that can no longer withstand the weight of scrutiny. Even those who once hesitated to question the narrative are now compelled to look deeper, their doubts finally given room to grow. As the tide turns, accusations boomerang back, revealing the emptiness behind each claim. Witnesses recall their discomfort. Those once pressured to conform now admit the story never felt quite right. The records, whether spoken or unspoken, bear silent testimony. One by one, the props that supported the original narrative collapse, until what remains is the clarity that can no longer be ignored, truth rising in the place of old distortions. Some chapters reach their climax when truth, long suppressed, forces its way into the open with a momentum no one can halt. The quiet unveiling of secret actions, previously hidden behind a facade of respectability, sends ripples through every layer of a community. Every unspoken alliance, every quietly exchanged glance, begins to unravel as reality emerges from the shadows, no longer content to be denied or spun by clever words. Actions once justified as necessary are suddenly laid bare for what they truly are, a breach of integrity that shatters trust on every level. It is no longer about who said what or who did what first. It becomes about intent, about the willingness to betray principle for a fleeting advantage. The moment judgment is near, those who relied on secrecy find themselves exposed, not by outside forces, but by the very actions they believed would protect them. As events build toward their inevitable crescendo, anticipation hangs heavy in the air. Participants, still clinging to the stories that once protected them, step into rooms expecting validation and support. Instead, they encounter a silence that feels colder than accusation, a collective awareness that the game has changed and the rules are no longer theirs to bend. Carefully prepared defenses, once powerful, now ring hollow when weighed against undeniable evidence. The process unfolds with clinical detachment. Facts replace speculation, timelines replace rumor. Each new piece of the puzzle strips away illusions, leaving only raw motives and intentions exposed. What was once a tangled web of shifting loyalties and false alliances begins to collapse, and those who orchestrated the deception feel the weight of consequences settle upon their shoulders. Denials fade in the face of records, and the chain of events is impossible to rewrite. The aftermath stretches beyond official verdicts. As news travels, the social landscape shifts. Once loyal friends withdraw, conversations become strained, and the circle of supporters shrinks. Trust, once offered freely, becomes hard currency, and reputations are recast overnight. Even those who once defended the architects of the scheme begin to question their own judgment. Old alliances dissolve, leaving only the echo of actions that can never be undone. The lesson lingers in places unseen. When intentions are driven by malice, the impact extends far beyond what can be measured by rules or policy. What was meant to undermine another becomes the architect's undoing, and the wider world observes with a mix of disbelief and relief as the consequences unfold. Even those who once relied on material strength are forced to confront a reality shaped by forces they can neither predict nor control, an order where justice arrives on its own timetable, and the spirit behind every action is laid bare. Some moments arrive when certainty dissolves and what once seemed secure simply slips away, replaced by a quiet void that refuses to explain itself. Hopes and connections previously taken for granted begin to dissolve, their warmth evaporating without warning. Foundations built on ambition or control start to fracture for reasons no strategy can prevent. The very energy invested into controlling others now circles back, magnifying with every attempt to resist. At the same time, progress for those once underestimated surges forward, momentum gathering speed precisely when resistance is at its fiercest. Where obstacles close one path, a new horizon appears just beyond reach. Every source of strength lost by those who orchestrated opposition quietly finds new hands, flowing to places where growth is recognized rather than denied. Old alliances wither while new support gathers around those transformed by adversity. A silent verdict moves through the environment, leaving no one in doubt where true value resides. There's no longer any need for blind hope. The shift is undeniable, woven into every interaction and decision. The unseen nature of true power becomes apparent, confounding anyone still determined to operate by old rules. Attempts at hidden sabotage reveal only their own limits, as invisible safeguards move into place, shifting outcomes in ways impossible to predict or control. Old plots evaporate beneath the gaze of watchful guardians, their influence broken by realities denied too long. In the aftermath, status and connection lose meaning, replaced by isolation and exhaustion for those who thrived on conflict. Meanwhile, those who endured emerge not only intact but strengthened, gifted with new insight and authority shaped by every challenge overcome. Vibrations shift as healing becomes the dominant frequency, dissolving what cannot match its clarity. Interactions now carry a new quality, genuine respect, tinged with curiosity, greets those recognized as survivors of fire. Encounters feel lighter, spaces more peaceful, as the energy of renewal radiates outward. Presence itself has become a form of blessing, capable of raising entire atmospheres and shielding against those with ill intentions. Generational cycles that once seemed unbreakable are suddenly transformed, powerlessness exchanged for possibility in a lineage newly defined. Wealth now appears as if summoned, each opportunity arriving precisely when needed and expanding beyond all logic or prediction. Everyday surroundings are subtly altered, charged with a new vitality that others notice even before it's named. Old fears around conflict dissolve, replaced by gratitude for the hidden gifts it brings. Every test reveals abilities hidden until now. Every adversary becomes an unintentional mentor, drawing out depths never before accessed. Relationships are redefined, with new faces arriving to share in this higher standard, while those unable to match the frequency quietly fade. What began as personal struggle transforms into a story with ripples far beyond any individual. The lessons learned become part of the wisdom passed down, proof that justice, though sometimes delayed, cannot be denied. Observers and bystanders share the transformation, carrying tales that serve as warning and encouragement in equal measure. What was endured is now legacy, a map for those who will face similar trials. The spiritual safety once only defensive now moves with confidence, reaching outward, making space for victories yet to come. It's rare to witness a time when unseen defenses step forward before any challenge fully takes shape. Subtle disruptions begin to scatter the intentions of those who enter with double meanings in their hearts. Their ambitions unravel, tangled by forces they can't comprehend. Words spoken in secret echo back with unexpected consequences, and their calculated steps find themselves blocked by circumstances no strategy can bypass. The entire landscape of thought has changed, as ideas now spark into reality almost the moment they arrive. Inspiration no longer floats untethered. It arrives equipped, eager to build itself into form. Each vision that enters the mind is accompanied by clear instructions, making what once felt distant and improbable suddenly possible and tangible. Dreams that seemed unreachable now roll out their own blueprints, revealing routes that lead directly to their realization. Justice in this new order doesn't look like retribution, but rather a meticulous balancing of every intention sent forth. Any attempt to undermine another quietly reverses, returning to its source, while every withheld blessing finds a new home with those prepared to use it wisely. Broken bonds are replaced by genuine connections, and the weight of lost opportunities is lifted, as the old story dissolves under the pressure of undeniable synchronicity. Eventually, those who dismissed the unseen must contend with realities that leave no room for denial. The mechanics of balance now function so seamlessly that even former adversaries begin to suspect a larger hand at play. The fallout from past actions becomes impossible to ignore, delivering a clarity that makes the reason for every outcome unmistakable. Observation has shifted. No longer the focus of scrutiny by doubters, the journey is now studied by those hoping to understand and mirror such resilience. The arc of vindication extends, not as a personal victory, but as an enduring lesson for those witnessing. For those who carry a sense of purpose, these events are more than a singular triumph. They serve as living evidence that every calling is real and every mission is honored by subtle, unwavering support. The illusion of control once held by detractors crumbles as they come to realize they never held the winning hand. The universe is not indifferent. It actively rewrites the script, positioning those who hold integrity as beneficiaries of grace they never asked for. Attempts to diminish what is divinely purposed are met with an unyielding tide that cannot be resisted. Pressure, rather than destroying, has awakened sleeping gifts that might otherwise have remained dormant for a lifetime. The onslaught intended to break open wounds has instead become the catalyst for transformation, revealing capabilities untouched by previous struggle. Healing now moves through every interaction, restoring those who approach with burdens, lightening hearts, and lifting clouds from troubled minds. Transformation radiates from the inside out, restoring balance, renewing spirits, and offering a living testament to the power of authentic presence in the face of orchestrated opposition. There are turning points where adversity unwittingly amplifies not just individual stories, but sparks movements across continents. Those who tried to stifle one light end up illuminating countless others, unintentionally writing the blueprint for how resilience can become a rallying cry for those scattered in silence. Abundance flows now with astonishing speed. What once required long years of preparation seems to land overnight, as if destiny itself has chosen to repay every lost moment with acceleration and growth beyond calculation. Unexpected doors are opening in places no one even knew existed. Opportunities gather at the crossroads, each one uniquely shaped by the storms weathered. Institutions and organizations that once stood distant are now seeking collaboration, recognizing the transformative impact of trial by fire. Invitations arrive to share hard-won insights, first from an educational collective eager to trace the arc of fortitude, then from storytellers wishing to broadcast these lessons, and finally from groups who see the power in dismantling hidden dysfunction. Perception has been sharpened to a rare clarity, transforming former vulnerability into an uncanny strength. What once slipped past undetected now registers instantly. Intentions and energy are felt before a single word is spoken. The very challenges that threaten to overwhelm have recalibrated the senses, turning instinct into a shield and discernment into a new superpower. These upgrades are more than self-defense. They are invitations to grow, mapping out new frontiers of what is possible for all who watch and learn. The influence of these victories extends far past the original arena. Stories of overcoming radiate outward, circulating through circles of seekers who once doubted the presence of unseen help. Witnesses find their faith renewed, discovering in the details of one journey the echo of their own hopes for justice. Even those who only observe from afar sense the shift, feeling the weight of old doubts lift as balance is restored where it once seemed impossible. The collective spirit of a workplace, a community, even a home, transforms when toxicity is uprooted. Creative potential blooms in spaces once choked by fear, and a new harmony arises, making it easier to connect, collaborate, and thrive. The very air seems lighter, and people notice how quickly productivity rebounds when old patterns no longer hold sway. Change is not only personal but structural. Systems update themselves to prevent old shadows from taking root again. Every lesson etched into this journey now forms a living archive, referenced by those determined to break cycles of harm. Leaders revisit their guidelines, inspired to foster protection for the vulnerable and to cultivate environments where wisdom, not manipulation, shapes the future. The story that began as a personal trial now serves as a lantern for many, lighting the path forward and ensuring that the transformation set in motion here continues to ripple outward, rewriting destinies for years to come. Certain struggles leave echoes that reach far beyond the circle of their original battle, reshaping landscapes for countless unseen lives. Hardships intended to leave scars become foundations of strength for strangers across distance and time. For those who tried to undermine with hidden blows, the consequences have just begun. Professional doors close without a sound, former allies drift away, and recognition once assumed to be permanent dissolves into silence. Reputation, once a currency, turns weightless as truth moves quietly through the world, closing pathways that can never be reopened. Invisible forces are at work, unraveling material security for those who once thrived on control. Old bonds fracture under unfamiliar pressures. Health becomes unpredictable, and familiar ground seems to shift beneath their feet. Investments evaporate for no apparent reason, and stability vanishes without warning. This is what occurs when the unseen fabric of reality moves to protect those guided by purpose. The story isn't simply one of endurance, it's a lesson in alchemy, transmuting each attempt at harm into tools for growth and sentinels against future darkness. Presence itself has evolved into a natural filter, instantly unveiling hidden agendas and causing those with harmful intent to falter or depart. People who once concealed their motives find themselves laid bare, unable to withstand the new clarity surrounding you. What began as self-healing now touches a far broader field, helping to mend the collective fractures left by generations of neglect. One person's willingness to face darkness becomes a torch, lighting the way for others to reclaim strength they thought lost. Resilience spreads, activating dormant courage within entire communities. Life takes on a different quality when support and solutions appear before needs are voiced. Events synchronize with uncanny precision, turning effort into flow and uncertainty into trust. Those who once watched from the sidelines now find hope and direction in the changes taking root. Policies and practices shift as lessons are learned, institutions adapt, and what began as a single investigation ripples outward to protect and empower. Stories of once isolated suffering give way to movements of truth-telling and shared healing. Recognition of self-worth, once a fragile whisper, is now an unshakable certainty. Blessings no longer surprise. They are simply the natural response of a universe that knows the measure of every heart. Support appears from realms and sources beyond ordinary comprehension, marshaling resources and protection that extend beyond this lifetime. Attacks on purpose-driven souls only activate wider circles of guardianship, seen and unseen, making every attempted wound an opportunity for deeper connection and collective uplift. Momentum builds, and what once seemed impossible now unfolds with ease. Projects organize themselves, alliances form effortlessly, and only what aligns with the highest potential is allowed to remain. Reflection reveals that the conflict was never just personal. It was a crucible for the possible, a catalyst for change that would echo through the lives of many. Resistance has revealed its true purpose: to challenge hope, to test the strength of light, and ultimately to prove that true purpose, once awakened, cannot be undone by those who misunderstand its power.